So, today, what I want to talk about is where do you start your campaigns? Besides a tavern, of course. Because if you didn't watch my last video, I talk about that. So, yeah, go watch that. I'd really, really appreciate it. Seriously. Please. Be pretty cool, though, you know? But today, we're not going to talk about taverns. We're going to talk about other settings, other places where you can begin your games. So I'll be going over some more creative ideas as well in this video. My last video I did kind of the same thing where I kind of came up with some more creative settings where you could begin that were a little bit more off the wall than your typical settings. So stick around for that. By the way, I'm Johnny. This is Johnny GMs. And I want to give you some tips and tricks, guides on how to play, and most of all, I want to give you some creative ideas to help you spice up your games, like I strive to do in my own. So let's get started. So, we're going to start in a tavern, right? No, we're not going to start in a tavern. Get the hell out of here then. Alright, we got that out of the way. So let's talk about the actual settings. So, we're going to talk about our first setting, traveling. You can set it in a jungle or a desert or a marshland perhaps. There's many ways to start your campaign on the road. I mean, I myself kind of do it, like my players have traveled on the road from A to B. You know, like in most of my campaigns or my one-shots or such, I've kind of started most of my games like that. I just think it's kind of easier because you can kind of get straight into the action sometimes, or perhaps you find something on the road or you find an obstacle. Perhaps the bridge is out, and so the party have to find a different way around. But you've heard that way around is maybe a bit dangerous. Maybe you're not strangers to each other. Perhaps you're part of a entertainment group, a troupe of sorts, a circus maybe, where you're traveling the roads and your cart breaks down. Or perhaps you're the opposite way around and you come across a troop whose wheel is broken down, or they're stuck in the mud, or they're down a hill and you need to try to pull up the wagon or the carriage. Perhaps they'll reward you with a song and a dance and a free meal for the end of the night, or maybe even with some gold or information or gossip. Perhaps you're guarding that same caravan, and so the bridge is out, or maybe there was like a landslide or rock slide, and so it kind of prevents access to the main road. You have to go around the long way, and you've heard that there's bandits in that region. You've heard that there's goblins or maybe kobolds, or perhaps there's even more exotic creatures down that way, so you have to be careful. But that's a perfect way to set up the party on the new adventure. So another form of transport is your sailing ship, or perhaps it's an airship if you want that too. But let's stick to sailing ships. So what I kind of like about sailing ships is you could kind of start the party in this kind of dire situation. You know, like the storm could be hitting the ship and racking the hull and such. And so the party has to try to survive the night. Perhaps the ship just capsizes anyway and they end up washed ashore. There's others where you're just guarding transport, and maybe you're attacked by pirates on the high seas. Or maybe you're just smuggling goods. Or maybe you're a pirate. You're part of a pirate crew and you're like going to attack these sailors and steal their loot and their bounty. There's kind of other forms of transport you could use. Like, an absolute favorite of mine is the lightning rail from the Eberron series. You could be guarding it for House Orion. Or maybe, perhaps you're a spy for House Lyrander. And so you're kind of there to infiltrate and take some train schematics from them. And so you're not really on a job for them, you're kind of like a double agent. Or it could be the other way around. Perhaps you're on an airship owned by House Lyrander, the House of Storms. And you're infiltrating it from perhaps House Orion, the House of Passage. And so you're kind of there trying to like steal secrets from each other. Maybe you're playing both sides, who knows? It could be kind of an interesting way to start a campaign. Maybe you're outlaws trying to escape the law in Eberron. You're on a lightning rail train, but you know, you're taking a job too. This is your last job before you retire. But it turns out this was a trap to lure you in. That could be a great way to start a campaign. So we've gotten over travel, so let's talk about prisoners. So maybe you start off on a sailing ship like I mentioned before, but you're a prisoner. You're a prisoner of war. Perhaps you're being sold into slavery. So perhaps you're not the only one who wants to escape. So you band up with the rest of the adventurers, or perhaps you band up with the rest of the crew in general, and so you rally and you riot against your captors. There's other prisons. For instance, I had this idea, like way back when, where I wanted to have the party wake up on this deserted island. They wake up in a prison, and they're kind of locked in there, and they have to try to get out. And a lot of their stuff has been taken from them. And then when they get out, like, they've never met each other. And so, like, that could cause conflict. Who knows? It could be an interesting situation. When they leave the fortress, they find themselves on a deserted island. There is a magical force field that permeates the island. They're kind of trapped there. And someone put them there. So there's kind of a mystery to solve now, you know? So that could be, like, a great place to kind of start. You know, feel free to take that, because I thought that was a great idea. I totally didn't take it from Divinity Original Sin 2. Ha 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 ha, you know? Yeah, let's move on. I mean, you could start on a road as well. You could be part of a caravan group and you're chained together and we're like captured by bandits or such, and you're kind of like you're forced to work in their mines. And then one day suddenly the mines come to life and they attack you. And maybe it's golems in the mine or Achaidh-cheide or something like that, like hive mind type creatures. There's some like really cool ones in Mordenkainen's. The name is lost on me right now, but they're kind of like these alien bug-like creatures. They're really, really cool, but perhaps they attack the mine. And suddenly you get this chance of escape. You start in this arena where you're basically a prisoner of war, or perhaps you're captured by these zealous people, cultists, or perhaps just really overzealous priests and spectators of Arius in, let's say, the mythic Odysseys of Theros. I think it's Arius anyway. And he is like the god of champions and glory and such. And so perhaps you're thrown into this tournament. It's like a tag team kind of thing. Maybe you're part of a group, or maybe you have to fight each other. But then maybe the chimera that they were going to send after you and attack you attacks the stalls. What if you take advantage of that and you cut your way through the crowd to attack the leader of this? Or perhaps you try to save them and hope that they will spare you afterwards. Or maybe you just decide to run, you escape, you use this advantage to get away. So that's kind of a cool way if you wanted to start in a more action-orientated prisoner dynamic. It's kind of a fun concept. Or perhaps it's just your classic jailbreak. An actual example is the Out of Abyss campaign module. It's set in the Underdark. And so you actually begin off as a slave, a prisoner to the Drow. So, let's start into the fray. Straight into the action. So, what if you were being chased by something? For some reason, I'm thinking of a giant rhinoceros like stampeding you. I don't know why, but it's the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know what that means for me. But it could be a horde of zombies that are attacking your party. And so they're just trying to run away, or maybe they're being chased by the law, or being chased by, well, any manner of creatures, really. So that's kind of up to you. Another such option is an ambush. The party are being ambushed by monsters on the road. You know, to them, they're just food, and they're like another meal for the next day, a week, maybe even month if they're lucky. Let's ask the question, right? If you woke up in the middle of a fire, what would you do? You just managed to get up because the fumes were so strong, and suddenly everything's on fire around you. The tavern is on fire. And you have a barbarian or a fighter. They demand that you get out of here. Who the hell set this place on fire? Were they trying to target me or the party? Or perhaps there was another person, and now it's become a mystery. That could be kind of a cool one. So my last point is gatherings. And I think gatherings are probably like one of the more, you know, suitable locations I think most parties can kind of start in. It kind of reminds you of that classic tavern setting, but it's kind of a little bit more in a town or in a marketplace or possibly a festival or maybe even like a ball or a masquerade. You know, so for instance, in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, there's an adventure set in a place called the Mentaloo. There's other settings like marketplaces. Perhaps the wizard is going looking for spell components. You have a chef in the party and they're looking for rare ingredients. you know, for meals tonight. Maybe they took the chef fee because, you know, they wanted to give you that temporary hit points and give your character a bit more extra flavor. Maybe the fighter or the barbarian are looking for weapons. Perhaps it's a festival that you're partaking in. And so they have these games like apple bobbing. So you have axe throwing or archery competitions. Maybe it's an arm wrestling contest, you know? And so the players have to like kind of go against each other, and it's like skill checks and such. And there's some like really great rules in Xanathars to kind of help you with some of these implementations. You know, you don't always have to start off in the action. If your players really prefer roleplay, maybe they can hold their own in this situation, and that's awesome, and that's fantastic. So what I want to go over is my kind of more off-the-wall ideas. And so we're going to start with a battlefield. You awake on a battlefield under hundreds of bodies. Perhaps it's in Eberron and there's Warforged. This is part of the last war, and you've just woken up in maybe Seir, in the Mournland. And now you're terrified, but you're not the only one who survived this. And you start to smell undead. You start to notice the bodies begin to pick themselves up and move. Perhaps there's other adventurers like yourself who are in the same situation, so you have to try to carry each other out of this dire circumstance. Or maybe you wake up in a body cart and you fall out of it. You know, you could be part of like a group, or it could be several of you. And another such idea is, what if you started in a city, right? I was like, whoa, that's such a crazy idea, right? Is the city sinking? Is that water everywhere? Like the city begins to flood, and it like the floor begins to crack, the city falls in on itself, and the people are running and scared. And you have to get the hell out of here. You find out that there was like Sahagwin. Is it Sahagwin or Sahagwin? I said the same word twice, didn't I? So perhaps there's like Sahagwin or Triton or something, and they've inhabited the city. They've taken something, you know, and you find a group of them escaping by something called the Apparatus of Qualish. It's kind of a magic item. It's basically a magical submarine. And maybe that's where you start the adventure. You got to take these guys down and take their submarine to get off this sinking island. Another idea I had is, what if you woke up bound and tied? Darkness all around you. You find yourself in this very claustrophobic cavern. You hear these snarls, these growls, these scary like creatures in the depths of this cavern. Perhaps you meet other adventurers along the way, of course. You know, that's how you meet your party. And maybe they're being attacked by these subterranean creatures, perhaps Underdark creatures, like an Umber Hulk, or maybe it's a werewolf den, or perhaps it's an Achaidh den. You were captured by a local village. They need sacrifices. So they send you into the cave, they tie you up. They knock you out before you can even tell what's what. You're food for whatever beastie hides in these caverns. And my final idea is one that maybe I took a little bit from Castlevania, and I've seen it from other such films and other such anime and stuff like that, and like some ideas. You know, don't be afraid to be influenced by movies or, you know, television or like anime or something, or video games. So like you can like add what you want to your games and make them like really creative. And so you wake up in a library, right? And I swear you see someone on the ceiling. But then they say to you that you're on the ceiling. Wait, are you upside down? Or are they upside down? It's this grand library where staircases go on the ceiling and on the sides, and they just go all which ways. And it just makes no sense, realistically. So it's a magical library. Then you come across a note. A magic mouth, so to speak. It is the villain. They have trapped you in this labyrinth, this maze-like library. And they wish you to find a relic for them, and then they will let you go. It is an interlocking, mechanical library that is full of mazes and such puzzles. You could use it for maybe Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There's some really great puzzles in the back of the book. Or you could go to the Xanathars and look for some really cool traps. There's some like really great monsters you could put in here, like animated objects, animated like enemies, like suits of armor, or there was kind of a cool stat block, but this is for the first adventure in Candlekeep Mysteries, and it's kind of like these animated books that just fly out and attack you, which is really cool. Maybe the books just fly out and hit the party. You could rely on constructs, or you could rely on the Stone Cursed from Mordenkainen's. They're supposed to be kind of like petrified humanoids, but maybe that's kind of like what's at the end of this dungeon. Maybe there's a basilisk, or maybe even a Medusa. You know, that's kind of an interesting big villain. Be wary of petrification though, because it can be kind of tough. Maybe it's cockatrices. Maybe they're attacking you. I don't know. I mean, most of those creatures have the ability to petrify you, but petrification is very hard to reverse. I think Lesser Restoration works on it, but I think it's Greater Restoration. I could be wrong about that one. So there's some such ideas that I hope kind of add to your games or to your first experience as a DM or Game Master or whatever it may be. If you ever do run these kind of adventures with these ideas in mind, you know, be kind of nice to like, you know, drop a comment below to mention if you did or not. I hope they're okay and they're fun, because I had a lot of fun coming up with them. And I really hope you guys end up enjoying them yourselves. And let me know yourselves what kind of like crazy settings or places you started in. And hopefully you'll come back for the next video. This has been Johnny. This has been Johnny GMs. Thanks for watching.